We'll just. Hey, time for a minor in reality. Please welcome to the program, Mr. Chris McMurtry.
Yo. Did you license that music?
Huh?
Did you license that intro music?
I wrote it, so yes, I'm hoping to collect some royalties on it. It also plays the outro. I don't know if it's long enough to get any bling, but why not? Well, so you know the drill here, right? No bullshit zone. We're here to talk about your path. We might go further back. We tend to start further back. I think a lot of how we grow up informs how we are in the world. And so, I think what I'd love to do is to kind of start with a little bit about your world growing up. Where did you start your journey on the dirt ball, and where did you what were the kind of the big formational pillars of your early life? And you and I have known each other a long time, and I know more of your story than I think many people do. So I don't want to dig too deep, but I also know a lot of people go through a lot, and you're only as sick as your secrets. And so I'll let you kind of take it from here, and I'll lead us down the path to today.
Awesome, brother. Well, yeah, man. You do know my story. Please feel free to, go down whatever path you feel makes sense. At the end of the day, I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm grateful to be able to share my story. So, So as far as my where it all started, it started right here. I was born and raised here in Nashville. And in Nashville Memorial Hospital, which no longer exists. So, it's been really cool, man, to watch the city grow and become what I like to call a real city, So
we'll get back to that later. We'll get back to that later.
Okay, cool. So
you grew up. You're a local, which is a rarity. Talk a little bit about the early part of your life, about how you came to music, about what that early period was like.
Yeah.
Mom did what? Dad did what?
Sure. I like to say I was raised by my grandmother, my dad's mom, and my mom had me at a very early age, and had her own demons that eventually got her. She and my dad divorced when I was before I was 2. And so I have one memory of my parents together that I cling to, and I can still see it very, very vividly. But it was really my grandmother who basically saved my life. Now I said I was raised by my grandmother. She never had custody of me or anything like that. But she was the one constant for me. As far as I don't know how deep we want to go, but
it's up to you, baby.
Yeah. So part of the reason I spent as much time with my grandmother as I possibly could is I was a victim of both physical and sexual abuse at a very early age, as early as like 4. So that kind of messed with my head in a
yeah.
That was my mom's second husband, and they divorced when I was 15. So I stayed away from that as much as I could. One of the stories people like to hear is how I stole a car when I was 15 and drove to New York City.
All right, well, let's start there.
Which I didn't.
Yet stealing a car.
Yeah, it's technically borrowing the car, but if you're borrowing without permission and you drive, across the U.S., I guess it's technically a theft, right? But my grandparents would go on this yearly cruise, and while they were away on the cruise, I took my grandfather's Cadillac, which was his like pride and joy.
My grandpa had a Cadillac, and he loved that car.
Oh, dude, it was like maroon with gold trim. Like people would like pull in the driveway and make offers on it, like all the time.
It was a Pitmobile. It was.
Yeah. So, and this is in Madison, Tennessee. While they were at the cruise, I took the Cadillac, and man, I thought I was so smart. Like there's this carport, and I measured the distance between the wall of the carport and the tire, and marked it with tape and stuff. And so I put it back in the exact spot so they would never know, except for the mileage.
Did you also roll the odometer back?
Right, like Ferris Bueller, right? Yeah. No, I did not. But yeah, like one of the only times I ever, lied or disobeyed my grandmother was when she got back. I was sitting in the living room and she came in. She goes, "Did you move the Cadillac?" She didn't ask if I drove it. She asked if I moved it, and I said, "No, ma'am, I did not." And man, I felt awful. And then it was 5 years later. Yeah, 5 years later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and I was like, I gotta come clean. And so we were walking across MTSU's campus, and I said, "Grandmother, remember when you asked me if I stole the car, or if I moved the car?" Moved. Yeah. I didn't say stole. I said
I moved it to New York and back.
Yeah, right. I said, "Well, I did," and she goes, "I know.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have done that." That was it. So,
that's a cool grandmother.
Yeah, man, she was amazing, and she was very strict. My one fear in life was disappointing my grandmother.
And how old were you when cancer took her?
See, this was right about the time that DART was being taken. So that was it was all coming at the same time. So that was 2017. So I was I was 28.
So you stole your grandfather's Cadillac, drove to New York. You're 15. Where did music? One of the things that I think about a lot is when Jim Morrison makes more sense than your parents, you're probably in trouble at home.
Right.
But that was music for me, was that place to escape to. When did that show up for you? When did music become part of your fabric?
Yeah, it was kind of always there because it was the one thing that connected me to my dad. I didn't know my dad very well growing up, but he gave me Who Made Who on CD. When this was probably around the 8th grade, and man, that guitar tone just changed my life. Which is why I have an SG today.
I was going to say, is that why the SG's in the cadre?
That is exactly right. Yeah. And I knew my dad loved the Beatles, and so I really dove into the Beatles. I kind of went after music in an attempt to get close to my dad, right?
And did that help facilitate some of that closeness, or was that as close as you could get was through that vehicle?
Yeah, it was absolutely, like, to this day, whenever we talk, which isn't a ton, but when we do, it's always about music. Yeah, and but as far as, like, when I went, like, down the rabbit hole, and the moment music, quote unquote, saved my life, was so I was a tailback, football tailback, American football, uh, and that was that that was my passion. That was my life. That's what I loved, because I was pretty good at it. And the reason I was good at it is because I was fast and I was very angry, and I wasn't afraid to hit people or be hit. And like, when you're in middle school and people think you're crazy, they get out of your way. So, but then I sustained a really bad injury. I was starting tailback my freshman year. I got hurt in the first game, and I basically snapped my leg, and it put me out for the entire season. And while I was basically bedridden because I had this, like, huge, like, leg cast, right? My mom got me a nylon string guitar, and I just started basically learning AC/DC and anything else I could like, get my hands on. I started writing songs in, and then I went back the next year, my sophomore year, to play football again. And this time, by this time I have an electric, and I would carry it to practice with me and put it in my locker. But then they found a tumor in my head, on the back of my head. And that put me out another season. And I was like, all right, forget this. And so, yeah, I just kept playing music.
And so in that journey, and again, I because I know so much about this story, talk a little bit about how, to me, it's so foundational to you as you're moving kind of through high school. I can't remember if it's Gene or Paul from Kiss that said, anyone who tells you they're not playing in a band to get girls is lying. You either played sports or you played music, right? There was only a couple ways to find your way into the female persuasion. Did you start? When did the first band kick off? What was it called?
Yeah. So I did both. I played sports and music, and was not interested in girls much at all. I just wanted to obsess about one of those two. As far as the first band. So I was in two different bands in the 8th grade. One was called the Blue Flames. And we did the most kick-ass cover of Knocking on Heaven's Door, Guns N' Roses version that you could imagine. And then I was in a Rage Against the Machine cover band called Rage Against Tennessee.
Oh, that's cool. Was that a 4-piece? Was that true to Rage? Was that?
Oh yeah. I did my best Tom Morello.
They just put out a bunch of live Rage stuff here recently.
Like 93. Yeah, I was just listening to it yesterday on my run, actually.
Yeah. They were on fire at that point, right?
I know, man.
And it sounded like not a club tour, but it wasn't. They weren't big rooms. They were.
No, yeah, agreed. And part of what I loved about it is Tom's solos weren't great. It made him seem very human. You know what I mean? Like there were definitely, like, bits of magic in there. But
that's a lot. I mean, when you think about it, it's a lot of ground to cover with just a single guitar player. Bass, drums, guitar is a tough there's nowhere to hide, right? You're basically naked as the guitar player. If there's no one holding down the bottom on keys, or no second guitar player who's, filling in, it's a lonely moment, unless you're Eddie Van Halen, and then it's, that's a whole other conversation. Okay, so started in bands in 8th grade, and that's been a consistent thing through your whole life. So talk now about kind of this moment of the first big life change, right? When you come of age, you become an adult, and you move from high school to high school with ashtrays, i.e. college. Talk a little bit about that, kind of the genesis through that period, and how music kind of continued to factor in there.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate in that every band I've ever been in has been incredible and has done quite well as far as bands go. And so, I mean, we were touring, as soon as somebody could drive, right? And I say that because with Harmonium, which was the first successful band, Rich, the bass player, was 6 years older than all of us, right? So it was him and his van, that we were going around in and whatnot. And
just out of curiosity, how did Grandma feel about your rock and roll lifestyle? If he was 6 years older than you, you were on tour by the time you were like 13.
Like 15. Yeah, it was the first time I was out on the road. So my grandmother, Church of Christ, and I went to church with her 3 times a week. So instruments were not a very welcome thing.
I was going to say, not welcome in the Church of Christ.
She was not happy, and let that be known. But she was also really good about, like, let me make my own decisions, I guess, and a lot of that probably had to do because, like, like she didn't have custody of me, and back then, before cell phones and Find My or Life 360 or whatever, it was very easy to be like, tell somebody you're at one place and then you go to somewhere else, right? And so I mean, New York wasn't the only place I drove. I drove to Chicago, I drove to Atlanta, I drove, I just wanted to explore. And so, like, basically where I'm going with all of that is, like, it's not like she really knew, it's like not like anybody really knew. I mean, at one point I was actually living out of my car, and I would find the nearest university of wherever I was visiting, and kind of scary to think about now, but I would just walk it. I would pay attention to where dudes were walking into a dorm, and I'd be like, all right, well, that's the boys' dorm. I'd grab my shower caddy out of my car, and I'd walk in like I was a student, and I would take a shower. and
this was in the context of touring, playing music, right?
No, well, yes, and like I did this when I would just go and explore on my own.
How old were you when you were doing this?
Like, well, I had a car at that point, so I was 16.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah. And but then with touring, I did the same thing. With touring, one of my favorite things to do was, like when you're at, near Texas A&M University, just go find a classroom to sit in, right? Did the same thing, like pretty much every city. It's how I ended up, meeting Todd up at the MIT Media Lab and getting to know Tristan, and so.
Yeah, well, so let's unpack that. So you're in college, you're on the road playing music, you're clearly jobs famous for music.
I realized I didn't answer your question. I didn't go. So I went one semester out of high school to MTSU. It was really because my grandmother wanted me to go, and I failed everything because I just didn't show up to class. And then I quit college for 3 years. And thought I'd never go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, you were getting an MBA in the real world, which in my mind might be more valuable than an MBA in the university, right?
Yeah, so I was touring all the time and loved
So
it.
what band now? Were you still? What was the band? No. As you've progressed, is this another group, or are you still in that core? Are you still driving around in his van, or are you in somebody else's now?
Well, Rich ended up he passed when he was 26.
Ooh, ouch.
He had cancer, and within a couple weeks, he was gone. That was a really, really hard season. And it was kind of the beginning of the end of Harmonium. Harmonium was doing well. We had I remember we had an offer from V2, and they brought us up and did showcases in New York. We were, playing CMJ and, stuff like that. We were pretty sure we were the next big thing. You know how that goes.
Oh yeah, you always are, right? You always think.
But then Harmonium, our favorite band was another local band called Caesar's Glass Box. And so us and Caesars would always play together and do stuff together. Anyway, Caesars was signed. I forget who. I want to say Island or something. Well, they originally signed to Sponge Bath Records, if you remember Mahaffey.
I remember Sponge Bath. Yep.
Yeah. So and then they ended up in bigger. Anyway, they broke up about the same time we broke up, and so Matt and Mason of Caesars and James and I of Harmonium formed Airline, and then Mark and Joel of Harmonium started a band called De Novo Doll, and so Harmonium went its own way, and then we had Airline, and so at I guess this point in the story, I would be touring with Airline.
Yeah. So you're dropping into classes everywhere. You end up in a couple of classes that I think set the foundation for really, in a way, your life's work. Talk a little bit about that kind of moment where you saw what was really an early version of what would be inevitably a platform that would be the underpinnings of Spotify.
That's right. Yeah. So every university I would sit in class, whenever they realized I
didn't belong there.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be there. All the professors, all the students, everyone got super excited and pumped and just welcomed me with open arms, right? And again, today, I don't even know if you could do that with security and things like that, right? But yeah, so I ended up at MIT and was in the media lab, which those classes are much smaller, so I definitely stuck out.
They knew you were, yeah.
Right, but they got really excited I was there and just wanted to show me everything, and I'm still waiting on some of this stuff to be productized. They showed me this one thing. It was so they sit me down, and gosh, this was in 2000. So iTunes wasn't even out yet, right? So but remembering back, what they showed me looked a lot like iTunes is a media player, and they said pick a Source song, and I was like, Source, I kind of and they're like, just pick a song, and I picked I think I picked Miles Davis, and then they said, all right, pick a Target. I was like, Target? No, just pick another song, and I was like, okay, and so I picked Beat It. I remember that very well, and they ran this algorithm, and it took all the sounds from the Miles Davis song and played Beat It, and it blew my mind. And I was just like, what is this? And it was the first time I ever heard the word metadata. And it turns out it was the founders of Echo Nest, which Spotify acquired. that were showing me.
And remind me, was Lucchese around? Was Jim Lucchese around the Echo Nest at that point? He came later, didn't he?
He came later. Yeah.
Foundationally built at MIT in the Media Lab, and then tech transferred out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you're sitting there in that situation and see. I mean, in a way, you get to see the future. I remember when we got bought by IAC, they had a deal with the MIT Media Lab, and we got to go spend time there, right? And this was back. What was the? I can't remember the name of the. What was the first sort of virtual world that came early? I can't remember. It had a name, and it's a senior moment for me. Anyway, I saw it before it was ever public. It was like. It was the best nerd school in the world. The Eternal Playground or Eternal Kindergarten, or I've got photos of all of this, and it was a really interesting place to be.
Yeah, and I
Still is.
I kept in touch with those guys, and like you said, that was really it just got. I'd never seen anything like that, especially around music. You know, and so it was actually on that same tour. So another thing happened during that tour, and no, it wouldn't have been that tour because it was when we had the iPod. So Matt Mosley, who was our bass player, had gotten this iPod, and we just like loaded it up with, 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? You know? So basically, like. I was being introduced to music that was outside of my CD collection, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I remember we went to Earwax in Louisville, which is a great record store, and I bought Arvo Pärt and Witold Lutosławski, and we put it on the iPod, and man, I just fell in love basically on that tour, which was 3 years later, something like that. I fell in love with classical music, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I want to be a composer. Like, this is my life's calling. And actually my last show was in Orlando, opening up for Derek Webb. Our good
there you go.
Yeah. So which I think he's been on here, right?
Yes, he's been. He's a frequent guest. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Derek, and not only his work, but who he is as a person.
Yeah, same. I just he has a Kickstarter right now for a rubber bridge. I just grabbed that as well. So anyway, sorry, rabbit hole.
All good.
So I basically at the end of that tour. And I got married somewhere along the lines here.
I was going to say somewhere there you met Anna, and that's a whole other conversation, right?
Yeah. We got married young. She was 22. I just turned 23. But anyway, sorry to be jumping all over the place. But
it's all good.
I had to quit the band, because I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to go to school because I wanted to be a composer. So I did. So
you roll off the road, right? You roll off the road and you tell your new wife, "Hey, good news! I have a plan, and here's what it is."
Yeah, actually, no. We weren't married when I quit the band.
Okay.
So we knew each other, but we weren't married. So it's just me at this point. And I quit the band, and turns out you have to know how to read music if you want to write music. And I couldn't read music. I was, just always learn by ear, and so taught myself to read music, and was terrified when I went to take the test at MTSU. And ended up getting to skip the first version of theory. I had done well enough. so then, yeah, enrolled at MTSU as a
So
music
let me
theory and
pause.
composition
How
major.
old were you when this happened? When you enrolled? Where we're in the timeline? You're
Yeah,
20.
I just turned 20, so this would have been 2000. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you re-enter the world of higher education with the aspiration of becoming a composer, which I've been told is a highly lucrative career.
Well, fortunately, I was a double major,
Yeah.
and also classical guitar performance. So
Another
you know
booming.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I doubled my chances.
Uh,
Of
yeah.
making a living. Yep. And so yeah. So then I ended up getting married while in school in 2002. So 2 years later, I graduate in 3 years, and I'm about to graduate, and Anna's like, "All right, what's next?" I'm like, "Well, I'd like to go to Princeton and study with Paul Lansky," and uh, and the reason I wanted to study uh, with Lansky is because he studied with Penderecki, and I was a huge Penderecki fan.
Yep.
So anyway, Anna doesn't want to go to New Jersey. She was born in Gainesville, Florida, and we end up getting in this heated discussion about basically how am I gonna make money, right? And in my frustration, I said, "Well, the only company I'll ever work for is Apple," and she said, "All right, apply," and I did, and knowing they wouldn't accept me, but they did, and that definitely changed my life. So I ended up, working for Apple for almost 10 years.
And you were there in the era where Steve was a part of that force of nature that is that company, right? So you were
Oh
there
yeah,
when the man who really, in a lot of ways, revolutionized several industries, kind of under everybody's nose, was leading the charge.
yes. I was there 2005 to 2014. The iPhone came out in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
and the iPad after that. And when I first joined, the stock was $40 a share. And so yeah, the rest is history, right? And it's all because I joined. That's why it really took off.
Well, and so talk about the time at Apple, because I think that all, I mean, again, all these things inform where your path becomes, I think, pretty clear, and leads you to kind of more of the present day. So back in that era, you're working in my mind one of the most innovative companies on the planet at the time. Doing what?
Yeah, so I started at Apple Retail, doing inventory control. I was an ICS, an inventory control specialist, and I loved it. It is really that part of my brain. It scratched that itch. But within 6 months of being at Apple, they started sending me out to train other ICSs. And then we ended up doing new store openings. And so I was back on the road all the time. I actually ended up opening 35 stores worldwide. But while I was out doing these NSOs, I was with various teams from Apple Corporate. And one of those teams was what internally at Apple we call IS&T, Information Systems and Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up working at IS&T, helping with I guess it's kind of my first product role was helping build the systems that run the retail stores. So like the Genius Bar, the concierge system, of course, the inventory control management system. And so it's really at Apple where I learned started learning about technology, and Apple is incredible at training people, um, and um, so I that's where I really just first started getting into tech. Was at Apple.
And at the time, they were also building that really sort of efficient supply chain. And when you think about kind of all the innovations that were happening in the back office that people never really saw.
Yeah, and that system really had a big influence on Dart, which of course, know Dart very well. Sure, we'll get into part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, in many ways, modeled Dart after that inventory control system, because it blew my mind how, with the Genius Bar and capturing information, you're able to control this, inform the supply chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see this trend of serial numbers that have certain issues. You're able to, in real time almost, like update the manufacturing. First off, to pull the SKUs, right? That are bad, and then update manufacturing and get new machines in there, so that the public really never even knew that there were problems, right?
Yeah,
because you give that person that brought the computer in an insane experience, give them a new machine, right? You're capturing all this information and then updating the supply chain. And so that's all metadata. And so that system that we built really informed the way that I handled classical music metadata.
Mm-hmm. So you're at Apple. I know, because I know you're composing. You've gotten married. And one of the things I've always appreciated about you is how committed you are to the family that you're raising and shepherding. So during that period, no bands, or were you still playing in bands?
Mason and I continued to write together.
Yep.
And Airline recorded a little bit, but we weren't playing out or anything. But what I realized during my time at Apple was, because I ended up working with corporate, and corporate was on the West Coast, that 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock their time was 10 o'clock my time.
Right.
And so I had this huge amount of time in the morning where I could compose, right? And I've always been an early riser, and to this day I get up around 4:30. I never set an alarm. It's just when I get up. And so I would compose first thing, and then go work for the greatest company on the planet, right? So I was getting to compose. I wasn't getting to study with Lansky, which I really wanted to do, but at least I was getting to do what I know I was put on the planet to do, which is make music. So from 2005 to this day, with the exception of the last 57 days, that's the first thing I do every morning is work on music.
Yeah. So the during that period at Apple, and you have a lot of side hustles all the time. Somewhere in there is where you and I first encountered each other, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think you came so with IS&T. If you were like me and worked in the field, you had a base store, and my base store was, of course, Nashville. Yep. And I think you came in with a bum machine to the Apple store in Green Hills. It was when I first met you.
Yep.
And I think you were working with a colleague of mine, Michael, if I remember correctly. And he didn't know Logic, and he knew that I did know Logic because I was Logic certified. Yeah. And he asked me to take a look at your machine, and I came out there to the studio, and yeah, we hit it off.
Yeah. So. And from there, you began to develop I mean, essentially you were doing the side work of basically tending the hardware of people who were in the creative industries. So expanding your network, continuing to grow, right? What you were doing along with everything you were doing inside Apple.
Yeah, and that was never the intent, but you and your kindness would tell others about me, and then they would tell others, and next thing you know, I have a little bit of a clientele list to where I'm, just using this gift that I've been given to help people with their computers, and so yeah, started that while I was at Apple.
So from there, so you're working for this company that I want to go back for a minute because everybody likes to hear a Steve Jobs story. I've got a brief one. I happened to be there for the launch of the iTunes Music Store and sat next to Derek Sivers, five rows away from Steve, and he was clearly a force of nature. Give us a little Steve anecdote.
Yeah. So I never had a conversation with Steve. I was in the same room with him several times. When you go work for Apple, they have the "Don't talk to Steve" speech, that they give you, and if you value working for the company, you
don't talk
to that unless he talks to you, right?
Right.
But yeah, this story I'm going to share is actually why I ended up leaving Apple. I thought I was a lifer because I loved it. Like thought I'd always be there. But when Steve got sick the second time, he called this all hands, and he didn't look well. It was kind of clear it was near the end, and he basically was like, "Hey, I want to thank you for making my dreams a reality." And it was really, really cool. And he was like, many of you, this has been your dream too. He's like, but also many of you have dreams of your own, and you need to go do that. And I was like, it was like a dagger to my heart. And I just remember I was attending virtually, but I remember leaving that at the end of that meeting. I was like, how am I going to work in classical music and technology? And that was the first thought that came to my head. And no joke, within 2 weeks of that, Naxos, which is the largest distributor of classical music,
based in Nashville.
Yeah, based here in Nashville.
Run by a crazy person.
Klaus Heyman, yes. Whom I have met.
Unfortunately. We'll edit this.
So
no, we won't.
But yeah, so Naxos was missing street dates for, at the time they were distributing like over 600 labels. Yeah. So if you can imagine, Mark, you're a gifted marketer. Imagine doing, this brilliant marketing campaign, and not only does the release not come out for people to listen to when you said it would, but it's like 6 weeks later when folks actually can listen to it, right? And I'm not making this up. It's a classic story to when I'm walking in, there's a guy walking out with his box, and it was the guy I was replacing. They fired him over that. But yeah, they brought me in because they knew I knew the Apple music style guide very well, and I knew classical music, and the reason that they were missing their street dates was metadata, because Apple was demanding it a certain way to make sure that it would fit on the screen, right? Yep. Which is Taylor Swift 1989 Shake It Off, very straightforward. But Beethoven Symphony No. 3 in E flat major, Opus 55 Eroica, Movement No. 1 Allegro con Brio, as performed by, right? Like, how are you gonna get
make that thing on that screen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And they just now got it right. You know, with
Literally.
Apple. So Noxos brought me in to help them meet Apple's strict metadata standards. And we ended up building a system to do that. It worked very well. Then one of my professors at MTSU approached me and said, "Hey, I'm starting a classical record label." And this is in 2015. And
I remember this. Yep.
Yeah.
I remember this.
And I was like, "Mike, that is a horrible idea." It's like, it's a bad idea to start a label, period, but especially a bad idea to start
classical label.
a
Yeah.
classical label. Yeah. And he was like, "Well, the inheritance my mom left me, she requested that the money be used for my music. So I'm going to be recording my scores, and I need a way to put it out." So anyway, he convinced me to do that. So I left Noxos to start Refiner's Fire, the classical label, with Mike. And
is Refiner still out there, or is it gone?
It's still out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And we recorded 22 albums in that first year. So I mean, he meant it. And
he must have got a nice inheritance. 22 records is not nothing.
No, especially paying, like he was paying the best performers, we could find. And so that was my first foray into business, was running that for Mike. But we needed to distribute, right? And actually went to Noxos because I was like, Jeff and Jim, they'll be cool with this. They were going to charge 50% of royalties for this, and in part because the system that we had built at Noxos was all manual, and we had like 40 musicologists manually doing all the metadata, right? And Mike wouldn't do that. He's like, "Can we do it ourselves?" And I said, "I think we can." So I went to Apple and I said, "Hey, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to start a classical distribution company. And I know the metadata standard. I'll guarantee you everything we deliver to you will meet that standard." Yep. And they gave me a direct deal. And then I said, "Who should I talk to at Spotify?" And they made the introduction. I said, "Who should I talk to at Amazon?" They made the introduction. I said, "Who should I talk to at Google?" Right? Yep. Well, next thing I know, I have direct deals with really everyone that matters at the time. Yeah, and thus Musique Dart was born, which is a horrible name.
No comment.
I thought I was being really clever, so art music, even it was bad French, but anyway. With starting this label and now a distribution company, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I reached out to you because I didn't know who else to talk to. And you said you should go to the EC. I'm one of the founding members of the EC, and they will help you. And I did. And at first it was incredible. I got in these classes and had wonderful mentors, and they were teaching me about all things business, and it was awesome. Should I keep going or pause for anything?
No, I think this. Keep going. I think you're on. You're now on track to deliver to drop us off today. It's all in the right direction.
Yeah, I didn't know how we were doing time wise.
We're good. Gotcha.
Okay.
I'll land the plane. I'll give you that. You'll know when it's time to land the plane.
Sweet. yeah, the EC was incredible. And they took me through their pre-flight class, which is where I had to do a pitch and all this stuff. And that pitch was for what became Dart. And
Yep.
then the EC was starting their version of Y Combinator, which was called Project Music. And I was encouraged to apply for that. I got in. And all the while through from my time at Apple through this, I'm doing this consulting stuff on the side, right?
Yep.
And so I would be doing the consulting and working at Refiner's Fire and going to the EC and to learn about business. And when it comes to Project Music, they ended up posting an article about Project Music and about me and how Dart had direct deals and we were launching as this classical distribution platform. Anyway, a few of my the folks that I did the consulting for asked to invest, and I start using all the lingo I'm learning at the EC. I'm like, well, we don't have product market fit yet. I don't know that this makes sense, right? You know, and so originally they wanted to invest $250,000, and I said no. I wanted to bootstrap this, and then it was 500, and then it was 750, and I just kept saying no, right? And then we get to start Project Music, and every day at Project Music, it's about the pitch. We're doing the pitch, and we're getting like ripped apart for the pitch, right? And I get frustrated because I'm like, I thought we were going to be launching a company, not doing a pitch. And they're like, well, you have to have money to start a company. The whole point of the pitch is at the end of this, you're going to do a pitch. And then if people want to invest, they will. I'm like, well, I've had people offer me $750,000.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? And long story short, we ended up taking the money at the advice of the EC. And that 750 turned into 1.2 because there's FOMO, I guess, set in. And
it always does, right?
Yeah. And then, so then they were writing articles about us, and we launched, and actually Dart was doing pretty well. We built a team. We had a few thousand customers that were using Dart to distribute music. And then Google for Entrepreneurs invited the EC out, and the EC asked if I would join them. And I was like, well, what are we doing? And he said, well, we're going to be meeting with Google's product team, and they're going to walk through. And I was like, oh, sweet. So I went out and did that. And as we were going through everything, we get into, and I was just showing them everything. I showed them the algorithm that we had built with Dart, so what Dart was, for those that don't know, is a user could enter whatever data they wanted to into the system, and it would magically transform that data into the data that Apple wanted to see, that Spotify wanted to see, that Amazon wanted to see. Now, all it was is, there's a limited number of classical music out there, right? At least as far as the canon goes. And the new stuff you just treat like pop, right? Like it's not like it has, most of it anyway, it doesn't have, the complex structure. So it was a matching algorithm. So if you entered, to use that example from earlier, if you entered Beethoven Symphony No. 3, it would finish Symphony No. 3 in E flat major, formatted the way that Apple wanted to see it, and then deliver that. So it was a matching algorithm. And anyway, it was Google that when they saw that, they were like, this is a good entity resolution algorithm. And I can't take credit for it. It was my engineers. they were like, have you ever thought about using this to match master recording and publishing information? And I was like, nope. All right, well, that would be a good business. And so on the plane ride home, I write up a business plan for that, for matching master recording and publishing. And when I got back, I presented it to the board, and it passed because Joe Galante was on the board, I was on the board, and Joe voted in my favor. And the third member did not. And the long story short, that third member and some of the other investors felt very uncomfortable that I was on a whim changing the structure of the company and what we were doing as a company. And I was like, well, I'm CEO. That's what I'm supposed to do, And
we're also the majority owner. Like we'll get there. Yeah. I don't know how deep you want to go into this conversation, but we can go as deep as you'd like.
Yeah, well, I'll tell a quick version, and then we can go deeper.
Yeah, we'll move past it.
Yeah, I'm moving really quick. I'm making it sound but yeah, so several of the those that wrote convertible notes felt very uncomfortable that I was changing what looked to be a promising business to something new. And that I just did it, right? It was like you mentioned my focus. Like it drives my wife crazy, but I'm all or nothing. I'm either here or
we share that in common. It's all or nothing. There is black or white. There is no middle.
Yeah, that's right. And so they basically they decided that they were going to get a new CEO. And this time the board voted for the new CEO. And I was really bummed. And I thought that was it. And I called you and I explained to you what had happened. And you asked me one question. You said, "Is that what you want?" And I said, "No." Like, "Well, why are you doing it?" I said, "Well, I'm the CEO. I report to the board, and I have to do what the board says. They're going to keep me on in a creative position, right? Whatever." And and you go, "CMAC, how much of the company do you own?" And I was like, 83%. And you're like, "The board reports to you." And I'm like, "No, the CEO reports to the board." You're like, "No, the board reports to the shareholders. You are the majority shareholder." And I was like, "What?" I didn't even understand that.
And you weren't the board chair, which is a whole other conversation, right? Like, anyway.
Yeah. So you give me the number of someone who has become a very close friend of mine, and he writes up he's a lawyer. And he writes up the meeting minutes of the shareholders, which was just me. And I fired the board. So should I go into the Pinewood story? We have time for that?
I think that's a good story. I think we should go.
It was one of the scariest moments of my life. So I invited the chairman of the board to have dinner with me. We met pretty regularly, right, as a CEO should with this chairman of the board. I invited him to dinner at Pinewood Social, if you've been there. And I know you have, but just whoever's listening. And I get there, like early, and I let the waiter know. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm going to need a whiskey. I would like for my friend who's joining me to have a whiskey. I know you'll need to card him, but you'll see he's of age." So he sat down and cut right to it. I pulled out that letter and I said, I really appreciate everything you've done for me over the last few years, but your services are no longer needed. And then I downed my whiskey. And it's the weirdest thing. He said, I wondered if you were going to pull this card. It was the only card you had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud of you. I was like, what? He told me he was proud of me. And then he drank his whiskey and he left. And I called Joe and asked if he would stay on the board with me, and he agreed. And then I called you and asked if you would join the board, and you agreed. So we completely, restructured the board.
I will add one little. Because I remember this meeting very well. I remember coming into the next board meeting, and I was at the beach when you called me originally, and had been there for a minute, and came back, and we walked into that next board meeting, which I think happened in Pearl Jam at Inc.
Yep, that's right. Yep, that's exactly right.
And we had a letter for your other board member that we had in our back pocket, and I took great pleasure in sliding it across the table and telling him he needed to shut the fuck up and listen, right? Because he did not know. This is one of the things that I always think about is this whole idea that it's better to take no money than it is to take dumb money. And that was dumb money for a host of reasons. And you were able to, and we talk a lot about failure as a learning mechanism, and probably the best teacher is what you went through, but it's also not easy, right? To toil and to know where you're going, and to have people who think they know better trying to direct you in a way that frankly they have no business doing.
Yeah, man. I went through it very quickly when I was telling it just then, but it was the darkest, longest, hardest period of my life. I don't know that I was necessarily suicidal, but I was definitely like, oh, this is what this looks like. And
it was hard. I remember it was a hard moment. I came off of a hard moment and right into sitting with you and yours, like you did for me.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, and I'll say it again, I likely wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for you, man.
Oh, well. You're a pretty strong human being. I think you probably would have made it, but I was just glad to be able to help. And it was a very difficult time, and it was baffling, because if you understood what was happening and you looked at what you were doing and who you were doing it with, it's like, wait, you want to do what? You want to derail this thing now? Like it was a giant idea.
Well, yeah, and I don't think we really explained the derail moment yet, right? Like, which was so we had fired the board and restructured. And by the way, with the new business model, we immediately had 5 customers, each paying us $10,000 a month, which was a lot better than
where you were.
The
river of classical music nickels.
But then the other note holders reached out to me and they said, okay, what are you going to do when we call our notes in February? And this is in October.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you do that? That would bankrupt the company. And they said, yep. And we'll buy it for pennies on the dollar out of bankruptcy. And that's what they did.
Well,
actually,
that actually didn't. I mean, they didn't end up buying it, but
no. Yeah.
That whole showdown where we brought another competent investor in, and said, hey, we're gonna keep going here, and they forced your hand, and it was essentially, we've got two choices here, and you made the right choice. You killed it. You put it into bankruptcy. You called their bluff.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yep.
So that oh, and that's when I started running. Was to deal with that stress. Everybody's always like, hey, have you always been a runner? I was like, no. I ran my first race the day before my 40th birthday.
So now you've had this, you were moving through this moment of really becoming having the potential, the unicorn-like potential, right? You were the darling of the EC's program. Everybody wanted to, it was, and to go from that to deep sixing the business. Talk a little bit about kind of that moment, and then what was birthed out of that moment as we were moving through the bankruptcy and learning of what a 363 stalking horse was, and how to, right, like all the shit you never want to learn, and all the attorneys you're paying that you never wanted to pay. Simultaneously, you're doing something. You've decided that you're going to keep going, but you're just going to start over. So you're really two things at once, and they're both jobs.
Yeah. So going through the bankruptcy, having to do all the things for that, while also, that old adage of, well, if I had to do it over again, I would, fill in the blank. I was forced to do it all over again. Right. Yep. And ended up starting another company called Ray, or RAI. Yep. Royalties.ai was the domain, which is a good domain, by the way.
Yeah, good domain.
And it was doing, that new model, cleaning up metadata, matching master recording, publishing information. We immediately got the 5 customers that were with DART, and the bankruptcy judge ruled in favor of this, and then ultimately one of our customers, Exactuals, ended up buying Ray.
Really, before it was ever a known product. I mean, it was really bought as a private beta.
Yeah, that's right. And then what's crazy is within months after Ray being bought by Exactuals was bought by City National Bank, which is owned by Royal Bank of Canada. So I like to make the joke, I went from bankruptcy to being a banker.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
And so and honestly, that transaction changed my life. Yourself, Mark, Tracy Maddox, who is also an advisor through that bankruptcy, and Mike Hurst, who is the CEO of Exactuals, are 3 men who invested in me and was there with me through the darkest time in my life, that I am forever grateful. And Joe Galante as well.
Galante, yep. So coming out of that period, kind of on the heels of Ray, you go back inside. The classic story of the juvenile delinquent going to work inside the corporation, which typically doesn't end well.
I wasn't a very good banker.
No, I imagine you weren't. So from there, as the story continues to unfold, kind of underneath that, you're still composing, you're still doing the things that you this idea that you were put here to do that.
Yep.
You're still doing that work. You've had a huge failure, and out of the ashes of that, you have this rebirth and success. So where does that take us next, and about what year is this now?
Yeah, so this would be 2017.
Yep.
Yeah, 2017, and and I was head of product at Exactuals, and we built the software that gets SAG-AFTRA paid, so as well as neighboring rights money with Sound Exchange, and and then so we've kind of nailed this metadata piece and matching, but then what about samples? What about, like if something is sped up, something is slowed down, right? Like how do we make sure that the rights holder is paid for that? And that's kind of the thread throughout all of this is, making sure that artists are paid, that musicians are paid, that credit is given where credit is due. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, what has been that mission. And it's always also kind of been kind of selfish because like I'm trying to solve my problem as a composer, right?
I want to pause there because this is an important component of, and obviously its own component, but most great companies are started by people who are trying to solve a problem for themselves, right? And against something that they feel strongly and passionately about. And I think one of the kind of common bonding agents between us, besides kind of a love for music and these common threads, is this idea of there are many people in between the creator and the listener, and many of them are taking a rake that doesn't really need to be taken. I remember launching Ecom back in the kind of the mid 90s when everybody was saying, you want to sell what on the where, right? And the idea of, I literally just eliminated on a direct to consumer play, the entire supply chain except for the mail, because at the time we weren't delivering files, we were delivering physical CDs. And your commitment to and desire to effectively correctly credit and correctly compensate the creator with as few people in between them and the audience that they're serving has been really the thread for you, and until I got out of the music business, a common thread for me.
Yeah, dude, 1,000%. And what I had seen during my time at Apple with what we were able to do with the supply chain, and I knew it was possible, right?
Yeah.
To account for things in real time, so yeah.
So from there, you've effectively, and I don't remember exactly how the Exactuals gig ended. Where did you go next?
Yeah, so from there I went to PEX, which PEX is fingerprint technology. Was recently bought by Vobile, Korean.
It's a Korean company, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
And the reason for PEX, I wanted to get, which is basically like Shazam, right? But on steroids, was for attribution, right? We had solved with Ray and Exactuals the metadata piece when it comes to matching, metadata to ISRCs and ISWCs and linking those and resolving that. But the identification of music is what comes before that, right? Mm-hmm. And PEX is hands down the best fingerprinting technology that's out there. And so I wanted to be close to that. And so, yeah, it was there for a few years. And then when I saw it was going to be acquired, I knew I didn't want to work for the acquirer, who I thought was going to be someone else.
Mhm.
But I don't know that I would have wanted to work for Mobile either. And
Yeah, probably not.
right. And our mutual friend and colleague Matt Ermy reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I want you to come run product." And I was like, "Well, I'm not interested in the live space, or it's not that I'm not interested. It's just I'm trying to solve this other problem. Uh, uh, I will help build a product team for you over a year if you let me build this thing on the side and you don't own any of it." And that was once.
Yep.
And so I went to Artist Growth. Love Matt, love that team. And began building Once. And the reason I wanted to build Once was all the things you just said about cutting out the middleman, but most importantly, my writing that I've been doing every morning since 2005 is now getting placed in film and production music and commercials and trailers and things like that. So I'm like, well, now I got to do what I've always told everybody to do and register my music. So I have at least for me, a huge catalog of like 700 works that I'm needing to register. And I get very frustrated very quickly because instead of spending that morning time writing and composing, I'm basically keying in metadata, and
Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm doing, and I realized I was putting the same data into DistroKid as I was putting into ASCAP, as I was putting into Sound Exchange, as I was putting into the MLC, as I was putting in, right? You can kind of see where this is going. And I was like, there's got to be a way for me to enter the data once and it goes everywhere. And so that's when I started working on Once. And now I'm at Open Play and have that same agreement that I can work on Once on the side. So yeah, so that's
So I want to kind of talk about this idea that and I remember having been around all of this, and I'm a Once user and appreciate the service and but this idea of building in public and kind of thinking about how you had been working and some of the stumbling blocks that led you to just say, fuck it, right? Like, I'm going to do it a different way. So I want to talk about that because I think the interesting timing of this is tomorrow. I think actually today it's public. Anyone can use it now, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So we were in what I called CPA or Chris Private Alpha, which means I was just using it. And then we went into private beta, which you were a private beta user, and now in public beta. So anyone can use it.
Yep. So talk about the building in public piece and what was motivating you and what the sort of interesting byproducts that have come off of that are.
Yeah, for sure. So the whole reason for it is manyfold. One reason is accountability. That there's this expectation that I set on myself that every day I'm going to talk about what I built that day or what I was working on that day. And it's not very fun to show up without your homework, right? So I need to have something to honestly talk about. So that was one element of it, was the accountability. The other, and much, much, much more important, is the customer discovery aspect of it, like the feedback you get from the community on it, right? And I mean, like so many solutions and competitors and other things have come out of the woodwork when you're just like, oh, have you seen this? Right. That if I hadn't been posting, wouldn't have come out. And and then be like, oh, are you going to make it do this? Right. So like, it's just that feedback, is really the most important element. And then the third piece of that is that people talk about it and they tell others about it, and so it ends up being really a marketing thing, where folks, hopefully more and more people continue to tell each other about it.
So as you kind of as this now enters kind of the public space, and you're continuing to do your work with Edward at Open Play, is there a moment coming where you will step away and this will become the thing? Is this a thing that you see? You've taken money and had a hard time with taking money. Because you took some dumb money. You've built this one largely under your own power out of cash. Have you been using no-code solutions to build? What's the mechanisms and the tools you've been using to create?
Yeah, several questions there. I'll ask them. As far as Open Play, I'm once ties into Open Play. Yep. Edward and I both see once as a part of Open Play. If you haven't used Open Play is like the de facto content management system, catalog management system for the recording industry. We're building out the publishing piece now, which is what I was brought on to do, and so you'll have recording and publishing under the same catalog management system, which is the first of its kind in the music industry. So if you are, an operations team, Open Play is your dream. You're just like, this is, like my nerd fest, right? And you love it. But if you're an artist, if you're a musician, if you're a songwriter, Open Play is pretty intimidating, right? Yeah. It's very back office-y, right? But once, as a chat agent, makes that very approachable, right? So you literally just converse with once and your data ends up in Open Play. So that's how once and Open Play work together. Will I ever step away and do it full time? That's an Edward and I decision, right? So it depends on what happens, right? Right now, once is not a whole lot, right? Like we don't have a lot of users. We're in public beta, right?
It's early.
Yeah, it's early. So as far as let's see, what was the second question? The no code.
Just what tools have you been using to build it, and how has, because the ability to build is I mean, it's a new moment in that.
Yeah, totally. So what's interesting is, so yes, there are a ton of no code tools, a ton of coding tools. Like I'll get into those real quick. But what's really interesting is what once really is very similar to what we were trying to build at Dart. For those that had ever used Dart, it was a questionnaire, kind of like Typeform, but it had conditional logic built into it, right? So you would interact with it like an agent, and it would take you down this path depending on how you answered, right? And the goal is to get to the end of the path as quickly as possible. Now you take what we were trying to do at Dart and do it today using, like agents, agentic AI, and it's on steroids, right? So because we have that experience, but also the subject matter expertise around music and music metadata and publishing and recording and everything, we're really able to customize this bot into understanding, not just music, but who you are as a songwriter and who you are as a musician, and like, oh, you're the same Mark Montgomery that did this and this. Cool. I'm going to use all this data. Cool. Right. It's like, so it starts to infer information. Right. And so, that is once, right. In building once, I use Cursor, and Cursor has an agent built into it, as well as you can have codecs in there, Claude code, and so so I basically, you don't have to know the syntax, right? You can just converse with the agent, and now this is where my experience as a product owner comes in, because as a product owner, I would interact with engineers all the time, and I was looking at their code, and many times interacting with their code. The same is true now. It's just the engineer is AI. But I still have to code a bit. It's getting better, literally feels like by the second, right?
So that kind of brings us to today. So we've just got a minute left, and I asked this question to everybody, kind of at the end. If you could offer the younger CMAC a piece of advice based on everything you've been through, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, before I answer it, I want to say I get asked all the time, do you regret anything? Would you change anything? And the answer is always no. And I think it has to be, because like you talked about early on, this shapes us, right? The one piece of advice I would give the younger CMAC is don't be a people pleaser. You know what you're supposed to do. You know what needs to be done. Trust your gut, trust yourself. Still don't have hubris, right? Be humble, right? Seek advice with those that you trust and love, but also be confident in yourself, and don't try to please everyone, right? That was and can still be my fatal flaw.
Yeah. Well, your superpower is often your kryptonite, right? People pleasing is not all bad, but certainly it can be like anything else. It can be bad.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking this 90 minutes with us, and I, as just have I just so admire you and so feel a kinship with you that you are often on my gratitude list, and I'm just really glad to know you, and I'm glad we had some time together, and I'm gonna let Zach take us out. Zach.